Trauma and Triggers contains explicit content. Please check the show notes for details.
Record the bullshit. We've learned from this experience that we should always just record the bullshit.
Always be recording.
We say some wild shit when we're not recording.
Yeah, that's the motto of a modern day content creator. Always be recording. Yeah. Our lives are available for the public to enjoy.
Yeah. Not us, but I do feel like sometimes most of the time our conversations should be heard by somebody else.
I agree.
I think we're that important.
I think we're so entertaining. Which is why we started a podcast.
It is. Yeah. You came up to me and you were like, hey, I've been wanting to start a podcast for a minute. And I was like, oh, bet. Let's do it. That was how this started.
Yeah.
That's really not that inaccurate.
No, it's not.
That's quite literally what happened.
I love podcasting. Like, I listen to podcasts all the time. I love doing it. I love doing it with you because I love talking to you. And I'm really happy that we started a podcast together.
I think it's great.
I think we're icons, we're legends, we're changing society.
Exactly.
One anarchist rant at a time. Did we say we're trauma and triggers?
No, we didn't. I made you record the bullshit and then we forgot.
Welcome to Trauma and Triggers. My name is Sabrina.
And I'm Audrey.
And today we are talking about polyamory. It's a great topic. I know people who are polyamorous, and there's also a lot of misconceptions about polyamory.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to get into, and I'm excited for this whole episode, but I really found some interesting people in history who lived polyamorous lifestyles that I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah. And as always, she did the history, I'll do the definitions, the who's, the whys.
The who's and the whys.
To start off with,
Before we start off, I would like to say I'm sorry.
I would like to tell you a little story about a conversation that me and Sabrina had about polyamory very early on in our relationship.
Too early on, some might say.
I think, how long had we known each other when we had the conversation? Do you feel?
I feel like this happened like around Christmas time because I remember coming over and helping you paint you were making Christmas presents for people because you're a great painter and stuff.
This was over the phone. This was a text message.
Yeah, but before that, I had been texting you about it, and then in person,
okay,
I remember you.
All right, yeah.
So at that point, we probably known each other less than 6 months.
Yeah, like less than 6 months.
4-ish months.
For a good 2 months of that, we had just been coworkers and had barely communicated with each other.
Yeah, and then we closed together one day, and just the connection was
the blooming of a beautiful relationship.
Yeah, immediately. I think I remember correctly, you spilled a bunch of mop water.
I sure did.
Under the wall, and then we both stood there and screamed at it.
Did we really?
At least one of us was like, ah! I don't want to scream at the mic, but yeah.
Yeah, we were great coworkers together at that place. Yeah. I feel like the next place we worked at together wasn't nearly as much fun, but the first place we worked together, I think gave us an environment to really...
to flourish.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyways, we'd known each other for about 2 months. I will say the relationship we had during those 2 months was probably, it developed into a friendship, a very close friendship, very quick.
Yeah.
A lot of conversations were had that most people probably wouldn't converse with a coworker.
Yeah, they might never talk about with their friends.
Yeah,
ever. So we're building my defense early on in this situation.
I wouldn't say that I blame her for the situation. Also, some of my reaction was based on previous experiences.
Yeah.
But one day, Sabrina texts me And she's like, what did you say? How do you feel about polyamory?
No, I said, what do you know about polyamory?
Yes. That was exactly the word you used. What do you know about polyamory? And I immediately was like, huh. Now I know enough.
For context, Audrey is a bisexual woman.
I am. And I was like, well, I know enough to question why you're asking me. And, you know, in all fairness, I did just say I know some why. I believe I didn't fully say, hey, I'm getting the sense that you might be asking me to be in a polyamorous relationship. I didn't say that until we met up later in person.
A logical assumption to make. Genuinely, I had just been like learning about polyamory, and I knew that you were a psychology student, and I think you had mentioned you were taking like a human sexuality sort of thing. So I really just wanted to pick your brain about polyamory.
But I was like, I've had this exact message before.
Yeah, it was.
And been propositioned.
In poor taste on my part.
So I was like, we've known each other for 2 months. It's early enough for us to know that we enjoy each other's company. What does she mean? What's going on here? So I was confused. It ended up just being a funny story, and I just wanted to let you guys in on that.
Yeah. I have a bad habit of doing stuff like that, of just being like, I'll think about something and then immediately ask the question.
No thought of consequences or outside perspective.
I had also messaged my mom because my mom had taken human sexuality stuff for her master's degree. So in my head, I was like, I'm just gathering intel right now, not sexually propositioning my new friend.
I was like, what's going on? I really like the amount of like I was so seriously was just like, I don't know what's about to happen.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
I was concerned.
And I do that a lot. People think I am like flirting with them or interested in them, but I'm just curious and friendly. So, and now, you know, 2 years later or whatever, we're finally talking about polyamory.
Finally, we're going into it.
Yeah, we had to put pause on that conversation. It's too much tension in the room.
Oh my god. But no, let's start off. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. Of a polyamorous relationship. So to define polyamory, I'm going to say that it's the practice of being involved with multiple romantic relationships with the consent, very important part, the consent of all people involved. I think that, you know, there's a lot of confusion about polyamory in general. But the idea is that everyone's aware of what's going on, they're okay with it, or they've at least discussed it and agreed to doing something of the sort.
Yeah.
And that's not to say there's a lot of people who get into polyamory and regret it, or get into polyamory under the idea that it'll be something different than what it is. But it's all supposed to start with, okay, we know what we're doing.
We're on the same page.
We're okay with it. Let's do it.
In, you know, not necessarily defense of polyamory, but like the same thing can happen in a monogamous relationship to some degree. You think you guys are one thing on the same page, and then it ends up not happening. So,
yeah. But I do want to like go over some types of polyamory. I looked it up on Google. There were a lot of them, and then I realized that a lot of them also meant the same thing. So it's not as big of a deal. But there's like, I think 7 or 8. 7. There's 7 I'm going to go over today. Some of them are things you've seen before, what you might generally assume polyamory is. But some of it I haven't really even thought about before.
Yeah.
To be honest. But to start off, a throuple. I feel like a lot of people have heard or seen a throuple before. But it refers to a 3-person relationship where the members supposedly have a balanced power dynamic, and are typically committed to only each other. I say supposedly for a lot of reasons, because there's definitely many times where, like, there's a relationship that ends up meaning more than the other person.
Yeah, I also, like, it's not necessarily, like, a terrible situation if one person holds a little more sway in a relationship than another person. It's a problem if that person uses it to abuse or manipulate. Yeah. But there's plenty of situations where, like, if one person makes all the money or something like that, that person might have more say in the relationship because they're in charge of the finances, that aspect of the relationship.
Yeah.
So not everything's going to be perfectly balanced and even in a relationship.
I mean, what I meant with the power dynamic, I meant more like a relationship between two people, and the relationship has a stronger connect.
Oh, gotcha.
Than the relationship between two other people, is more what I meant with that. But funnily enough, this relates to 2 things. My introduction to polyamory, I believe, was Onision.
I haven't heard that name in so long.
And I feel like this is going to bring up some memories for a lot of people who might be listening. So, in case you don't know who this person is, he was a YouTuber. Terrible person.
Yeah.
Awful person.
Bad guy.
But he was very popular for a little while. And he had a wife. And, you know, a lot of the content included his wife. And then, out of nowhere, they have a new addition to their relationship. They become a throuple. And that was, I'm pretty sure, my first introduction to a polyamorous relationship. I can't remember what year that happened, but I know I was pretty young. I was like 12.
Yeah, I was thinking like
11 or 12.
2012, 2014, somewhere in that range.
Maybe, yeah.
But, yeah, the idea of a throuple makes me nervous, because whenever I had a group of 3 friends, something disastrous
right
always happened.
That's my thing. That was why I said something with the power dynamics, is because, like, I don't think I've ever been in a 3-person emotional connection and had it go well. Yeah. There's a lot of times, unless, you know, you guys are perfect, people get ganged up on, or people feel left out.
Right.
So I think that it doesn't always bode well.
Yeah.
Unless, you know, people are just really comfortable where they're at.
Yeah, I definitely think, you know, there's a hypothetical situation where people are really good at communicating and, like, not letting their insecurities overwhelm them or anything like that. But I would never want to be in a throuple. I'd be like, we got to even out the numbers.
Yeah, me too.
I don't even want to have 3 friends.
There has to be
or 2 friends. There's got to be 4. Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, yeah, that was what I think of when I think of a throuple. Is Onision. Which is wildly concerning. But, you know, to the whole idea of power dynamics, there's also a quad, which is the same thing as the throuple, but with 4.
Yeah.
And I feel like this whole idea of the number of people in a relationship can go up to whatever number you want. So I'm going to stop going up.
An octo throuple. An octuple.
An octuple, yeah.
Yeah.
I because the whole idea of, you know, this like throuple, quad, whatever, is that the relationship is closed to the people who are in the relationship.
Yeah.
Everybody's in a relationship with each other, and they are only having relationships with the people within the polyamorous group. But that's what makes them different than some of the other things I'm going to talk about. That was my only point in saying that. But the next one is a V relationship, like the letter V.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens when one person is romantically involved with two people, but the relationships are separate. So, like, the shape of the V represents the relationship itself. I think this one's kind of boring. I don't have a whole lot of
I don't have feelings.
I don't know what else to say about this. It's just like they're separate and whatever. It's a throuple, but the two partners don't really care about each other.
Did you ever watch the show Bones?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember when she was in a V relationship where she had like one person who she really liked having sex with and one person she was really like intellectually stimulated by?
Did they know about each other?
No, they didn't.
So it's not a polyamorous relationship.
Well, like at that point, like what I remember is she was like, well, we never said that we were exclusive or anything like that. I like dating Brian because of this, and I like dating you because of this.
And were they okay with it afterwards?
No, they broke up with her.
Okay. So, see, that's the difference, is that I'm pretty sure with, like, a V relationship, like, the whole point of polyamory is that they're aware that it's happening, even if they're not, like, interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
They know that it's happening, and they're okay with it.
Yeah.
So that's the key point of all of these relationships. Otherwise, we could just go around saying that, like, any person who's cheating is polyamorous. That's not the case. The whole point is people are aware and they know about it and they're okay with it.
Yeah. Consensual non-monogamy.
Yeah. So that's a V relationship. Hierarchical polyamory is when the partners involved place more importance on some of their relationships than others. This is a relationship where, like, ranking is practiced. Mm-hmm. So if there's more than one partner, there would be a primary partner among them. And this reminds me of like married couples who are like, let's open up our marriage. Mm-hmm. And then, like, there's another partner who comes into the marriage. Perhaps their idea of, like, becoming a throuple or a quad. Mm-hmm. But the two main partners are still the married couple. That's what this reminds me of. So that's hierarchical polyamory. I keep wanting to say polygamy, and just rolls off the tongue, you know? But my favorite one, I like this. It's kind of wholesome. And I like the name. I think Sabrina will also like the name. It's called Relationship Anarchy. Okay, so relationship anarchy is typically a relationship where there's an equal importance for all of the emotional relationships for a person. So they might have multiple sexual partners or multiple romantic partners, and then, like, some friends or some people they, you know, aren't sexual with but are romantic with. Mm-hmm. And they're all equally important. There's no hierarchy placed on any of them. None of them are considered better than others. And I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's wholesome.
I like that. That reminds me of that show, like, Building a Sex Dungeon with that little British lady. And she had the polyamorous... They were, like, 7 people in the polyamory group. And she was building a sex dungeon for all of them. And they had that structure where no one was, like... There wasn't a partner that was, like, or a grouping that was more important than any others. They all just got together.
Yeah, some of them were fucking, some of them were friends.
Yeah.
Some of them were, like, you know, more romantic. They like going on dates, but they, you know, didn't fuck. Mm-hmm. But, like, all of them were important.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
But next one, these two I find interesting. The kitchen table polyamory, which first of all, wild name. Wild name. But it does mean exactly what it says. And it's also...
You're in love with multiple kitchen tables.
No. But it's also like gaining a lot of popularity, which is very interesting to me. But it's the idea that you can bond with your partner's partner to the point that you can all sit at a kitchen table together. Okay. So a few things about this that I just don't even know for sure. Whatever. Number one, the main point of this, I guess, is, so that the other partner has as many, or the people in all of the relationship have as many, like, emotional support and connections as possible, even if they're not, like, romantically or sexually involved. And also, I feel like we have started to get to a point in society where it's like, hey, none of us can afford rent.
Yeah.
And what if we all just got together, liked each other enough to just have a financially stable relationship and take care of each other's kids?
Yeah.
And that's what this is giving.
Yeah. I talked about this a little while ago. I was like, I wonder if part of like why polyamory is on the rise, I don't think it's a major reason, but it's just the practical financial reason of you could have 2 roommates or, multiple roommates just helping out.
Right.
Financially.
And we're all sucking and fucking.
Amazing.
Well, some of us, maybe
some
not
of us
all
are just at the kitchen table.
But it's just like open.
Yeah.
And whoever's not open with another person is still friends.
Yeah.
So the opposite of a kitchen table polyamory is parallel polyamory. Again, still trying to say polygamy. That's really getting to me. I don't know why. But parallel polyamory indicates that a partner's partner has zero interest in even, like, knowing each other. So, like, they're aware that they're there. They just don't want it.
Yeah.
And to me, this sounds like a strictly, like 2 people already have like a romantic and sexual relationship, and then it's like open, and this person just is having sex with this other person.
Yeah.
And that person just doesn't want to know about it. I feel like that's not completely uncommon for relationships, especially relationships that are like, I don't know, going through a hard time or like have been long standing. I think that sometimes people use the idea of polyamory as like a cure-all for their relationship, which is not how it works and rarely fixes any problems in the relationship. But sometimes, that is just what's needed, and if you guys are having a conversation about it and it works for you, go for it. But those are the types of polyamory. So fun, cool, amazing.
Love them.
Go off.
Kitchen table is such a fun name for a type of poly.
It really is. Relationship anarchy is still my favorite.
Oh yeah, I love that.
But we're going to move on to some misconceptions of polyamory. Polyamory often confused with polygamy. See, now I'm not confusing the definition of the two. I'm just confusing the words because they're very, very similar. But polygamy is the practice of having more than one wife or husband. So it's not just a romantic or sexual relationship. They are married, and there's multiple of them. And this is like, polygamy is most commonly seen in like multiple wife kind of way. Like that's the main.
Yeah, we only found 2 countries that practice polyandry, which is polygamy with multiple husbands and one wife.
Yeah. See, now I'm cool with the vibe of a country that is like, okay, we can have multiple husbands or multiple wives. If that's the case, cool, great, wonderful. Typically, that's not how it goes. For some reason, there's just like there seems to be some kind of policy that only men can have multiple wives.
Yeah.
Which I think is stupid and sexist and dumb.
1 star.
Yeah. 1 star. And also it seems like the main, like, I feel like I might be stealing some of Sabrina's thunder with this, but I'm not sure. The main reason why I think this is the case is just because, like, historically speaking, men were the breadwinners. So there was this idea that, like, if there's, you know, multiple, like, one man could take care of multiple women. And it could just be like a household thing or whatever. And
yeah, it was also like, in some cultural historical context, it was like, if you could afford to have multiple wives, you and multiple like concubines, you were wealthy and had a lot of power. So
yeah.
it was also like a show of how much power you had.
Yeah. And this is not the case now. People can have jobs. Everyone can have a job for the most part. Can.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's always funny when I'm out with you on, like, you know, a Tuesday afternoon for some reason, and you see people out and about, and you're like, why are you out? Why aren't you at your job? You do this all the time. And I'm like, people have different work schedules.
I know. I'm just mad that they're there. It's not like I'm not aware that, like, people have different, like, work schedules. Some people are working at 3 a.m.
contributing to society.
It's just like, I just want to know why you're here right now.
Yeah. No, it's just
when you
funny.
Could be somewhere else.
It's so funny to me.
I don't care if it's your job or not. But anyways, that's the first point of, like, misconceptions about polyamory. I think there's a lot of negative associations with polygamy because typically it's used to suppress women in a lot of cases.
It's definitely, our concept of polygamy is tied to Mormons,
and, like, in other countries, even then it's used sometimes to, like, it's not used in a good way. And it's very much, it's often giving sexism. Yeah. So people have a negative view of that, and then they think that polyamory is the same thing as polygamy. And I can see why people would not like polyamory if they thought it was polygamy.
Yeah.
I can see why that would be the case. It's illegal here, so there is that for starters.
That's true. I think, like, Utah is the only state
so wild
where it's legal. And, you know, technically it is legal if you don't legally marry. Like, if it's just like a ceremony or something like that.
Yeah. But another misconception is that polyamory is cheating. And to this, I feel like people who say this have never been in a polyamorous relationship or are, like, extremely ignorant to what polyamorous relationships are in general, like, just the definition. Because, you know, the concept of cheating is based off the fact that the other person is not okay with said person having sex with someone else.
Yeah.
The whole point of polyamory is that everyone's cool and chill.
Yeah.
And consented. So you're wrong. There's that. Another one, polyamorous people are afraid of commitment. Now, we're starting to get, okay, I think that anyone can be afraid of commitment.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of monogamous people out there who are afraid of commitment and honestly would benefit from a polyamorous relationship. Some people just do better in them. And as long as that's something that's communicated and everyone's aware and okay with that, then, like, cool, go off. I'm fine with that. But to be honest, a lot of polyamorous people are in multiple committed relationships. They're willing and comfortable with committing to a lot of people at once. Yeah. And to me, that seems like the opposite. So I think that this misconception is mostly based off of the fact that, like, people just don't like the idea that, you know, someone might want to have sex with more than one person for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And if that's your only concept of commitment reflect.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of the misconceptions I was seeing apply to some polyamorous relationships, but not all of them,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously perpetuates negative stereotypes. Anytime you generalize about a group of people, it's not going to apply to everyone, and it might apply to some people, but to say it applies to everyone is just like, it's wrong and
Mm-hmm.
ignorant, and it erases a lot of people's opinions and stories.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do that. But like, to say that some people who are in polyamorous relationships want to have sex with a lot of people, that's not true for some people who are in polyamorous relationships.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's the whole concept of all of the polyamorous relationships out there. So just want to point that out. Just because it might be true for some people doesn't mean it's true for everyone. Who is most likely to be polyamorous?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know. I like had an idea of who would be, but I didn't like concretely know.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked it up, I had to do a little bit of a deeper search because I looked up who is most likely to be polyamorous. And the first thing that popped up was men. And I was like, okay, interesting. Glad we're here. According to the Rolling Stone, it's estimated that around 4 to 5% of people in the U.S. practice non-monogamy. In some way, shape, or form. We've talked about the types already. But polyamorous people are the type of people to reject or deviate from traditional group labels. So like the study was showing that a lot of people who were polyamorous didn't affiliate with any two party political parties.
Mm-hmm.
Democrat, a lot of them like said other or said like any of the other different things. Democratic, socialist, blah blah blah, that thing.
That's interesting.
And to go along with this, they are more likely to identify as bisexual or pansexual, or identify with labels that are inclusive to like a lot of people sexually. And as we talked about earlier with like the whole, it might help with money and economic stuff, it's correlated. I don't want to say significantly because I can't really remember how much it was correlated, but people of lower socioeconomic status were more likely to be polyamorous, which I do feel like one of the stereotypes about polyamorous people is that they're like rich and bored.
Yeah, that kind of does surprise me a little bit.
And that's not the case. Like, they just are more likely to be people of lower economic status. Another thing that I found pretty surprising was the study that they did found that women are overall more comfortable with the idea of non-monogamy than men.
Yeah, one of the sex researchers I follow, Dr. Justin Lay Miller, he talks about how women generally have an overall higher rate of sexual flexibility.
Yeah.
So they're more interested in exploring different like kinks and fetishes than men would be, having sex with different people, having, consensual non-monogamy, all of that, than men overall. Women are generally sexually more flexible.
Yeah, and I mean, the article I kind of talked about, like, that they think that this was because the idea of like an ethical non-monogamy would be more appealing to women, because like there's this whole thing about like men cheating.
Yeah.
And then women are just kind of like, we could just all fuck each other. Yeah, what if we did that instead?
Hey.
I don't know. I feel like walking into a relationship, I wouldn't like be against it. I'm not against a lot of things. Like, I'm very open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was like entering a relationship that like monogamy was already addressed, or like polyamory was already addressed, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
I think the weird part would just be adjusting like mid relationship, if that was the like a change that happened. I don't know how I would adjust to that.
Yeah.
But they call that, how do you say it again? Polyamory,
Oh,
ambyamory.
ambi
Are people who are okay with monogamy and polyamory. They're
Yeah.
okay with being in a relationship in either of those.
I right now just feel like polyamory is not for me. Maybe in the future, but I don't see my
Yeah.
personality changing.
In my current relationship, that's not something I would want, and typically it's not something I would gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I have been in a polyamorous relationship while I was in like high school,
Yeah. And
I think.
how was that for you?
It was fine.
It was fine.
It was really weird. I didn't like the guy that was in the relationship, and then the girl that was in the relationship I also didn't really like, but she was obsessed with me.
Yeah, it was fine. I just didn't like either one of them.
Which is a good representation of most of my relationships.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that I was in a like I don't have any friends stage of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I got propositioned and I was just like, I guess. I don't know. And then like the girl that was in the relationship like really liked me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was kind of weird. And then later on, like my first year of college, they called me up and were like, hey, you want to hang out? And so I went and I got dinner with them, and it was like really awkward and weird, and then we never spoke again. But like the guy had texted me whenever they like asked to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
The guy had texted me and he was like, it would make so and so's year if you would hang out with us. And I was like, I don't like this. I feel really weird.
Her year?
Can we not do this?
Oh my gosh. That is really
Yeah, it was
intense.
It was very odd.
How long had it been since you communicated with them before that? Do you remember?
I mean, we all went to school together.
Oh, gotcha.
So, like, it had, and this was, like, during COVID. So, it was, like, probably a year or two.
Gotcha. All right. It's my turn. I'm excited. So, I'm going to start with some of the whys. You know, why are people polyamorous? What draws them to polyamory? I got my information from an article that was talking about a study. The article is on scipost.org, and the study is initial motivations for engaging in polyamorous relationships. Why I didn't get it directly from the study is I would have to pay $40
Go off.
to look at the study. So you know what? This is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
People who are, and both of those are going to be linked in the show notes if you're interested and if you want to drop $40 to look at this study. So people who are attracted to polyamory place a lot of weight in values like honesty, openness, and communication. When you are in an intimate dynamic involving multiple people, you have to put more effort into honesty, or at least that's the idea. Like, that's part of the attraction. Let me clarify, this study was, they basically went to r/polyamory on Reddit and asked a bunch of questions about, you know, what brought you into polyamory? What's your interest in polyamory? How did you become polyamorous? When did you, like, stuff like that. So another big reason that came up was general dissatisfaction with monogamy, either as a concept or they were in a monogamous relationship that wasn't satisfactory. So a person interested in a polyamorous lifestyle may have realized that they have emotional, sexual, and intellectual needs that are not being met by their monogamous partner. So it's just like the idea of, you know, maybe you have a highly intellectual interest and your partner doesn't have those same interests. You might look for someone else to share that with.
Yeah.
And then develop some sort of romantic or something like that. I don't think any of these reasons are necessarily bad. like they're just neutral reasons to me. They're neither good or it's just like
oh, okay,
here's
well,
where it is. Yeah. Another reason is meeting a person. Like another common reason was they met someone while they were in a monogamous relationship, and then they developed feelings for that other person. So it kind of opened them up to the idea of non-monogamy.
Yeah. I mean, like, my only comment on a lot of these reasons are just like, it kind of sucks for the person who is the monogamous partner.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't want to be that partner who's like, oh, so
you're not enough.
Yeah, that's great to find out. Thanks.
Yeah.
And you know, like, that's why I said, like, if it's an open conversation that you have at the beginning of a relationship about like wanting to do that, great, cool, whatever. But like mid relationship, if somebody was just like, hey, you're not meeting my needs sexually, emotionally, intellectually, I would not be okay with that.
That would be really hard for me to hear.
It would be hard for me to take. And I'm sure it is for most people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certain there's other ways you can word it so it comes across different, but that's the reality of what it is. There's something about you that no longer is meeting my needs.
And that's going to happen in any relationship. I think it's the important part is that, like, when you're going through the process, you recognize that, hey, maybe, like, if said relationship ends, if the other partner is okay with it, or like you guys are willing to work things out, great. But I just hope that as people go throughout it, they acknowledge that, like, this is something I either need to change my lifestyle for, or I need to make sure that the next partner I meet is like meeting all of my needs.
Yeah.
Before I get in a relationship with them. If that's not the case, don't be with them.
Yeah.
Or have multiple partners that together meet all of your needs.
Yeah. I also just think, like, you know, the idea that one person is going to meet all your needs perfectly all the time is not realistic and is kind of a burden to put on somebody.
Yeah. And so, having one of it be like, oh, you know, one of the reasons was that they realized, like, their, like, intellectual needs are not being met, or like emotional needs aren't being met. Find a friend.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Like, for me, like, that seems like that's important. It's important to have friends. If you absolutely need people in your life, or like anyone in your life who is like has an emotional or intellectual connection with you to be a romantic partner, also reevaluate.
Yeah.
There's other things going on.
I don't necessarily think that polyamory is a bad answer to you have needs that aren't being met by your one partner. I just couldn't imagine if I was like, one day I'm not feeling my needs met by Jack, who gave his consent to have his name said on the podcast, by the way.
Okay.
Little lore drop for everybody. Husband's name is Jack. Anyway.
I'm pretty sure I've said his name on here plenty of times.
Yeah, we just started saying it. Once he started editing the podcast, it was like, okay, you're part of Trauma and Triggers.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, it is what it is. But like, if I one day realized I wasn't having a need met by him, I would just figure it out. I don't know.
I think my first response would be like, how do we fix this disconnect? Like,
within
I could talk
the relationship.
To you. Yeah. And like, if something's not being met, like, let's figure out how to get it met within the relationship. Or like, if it's emotional or intellectual, like, let me see if I can join a club.
Yeah.
Like, do something.
If it's sexual, I'll masturbate more. Like, I don't know.
It just feels like I typically, when there's problems that arise in my relationship, my first reaction isn't like, I need to go find another partner.
Yeah.
And if it is, like, I'm a little concerned about your relationship.
Yeah.
And like, maybe you shouldn't have been with this person in the first place. Because polyamory, I have zero problem with. And if that's a relationship style that you need and you feel suits you better, great, amazing. If you find somebody and you're with somebody who you know wants a monogamous relationship and that's not something you're capable of, don't be in a relationship with them. That's not fair.
Yeah, that I agree. There's situations where I think you're in a monogamous relationship and then both partners realize, or one partner brings it up, and they like both transition into polyamory.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it would be really hurtful to have your partner be like, you're not what I want anymore.
Yeah.
I imagine that can be upsetting. So that transition from monogamy to polyamory, I'm like, how do you navigate that without harming your partner? Or is it just, you're just going to hurt them? It is what it is.
And I mean, like, if that's the case, that's normal. I feel like that is a part of life, is to like find partners and then maybe it doesn't work out. I'm just saying, like, to ask or expect your partner to be okay with another lifestyle like that, and like your first response to they're not meeting my needs is, I want to add another person to this relationship.
Yeah.
It's not really a fair ask.
No, it's not. The final common theme that this study found was sex.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Someone just might want to experience sexual variety through multiple partners. That a monogamy, like, if you want to have sex with a bunch of different people, you can't do that with just one partner. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Like, if that's one of your motivations, I don't think that's necessarily shameful or anything like that. I would say, however, you can experience sexual variety with one partner.
Yeah.
Like, if you find yourself having sex the exact same way every time with one partner, it is kind of like, maybe you need to mix things up.
Yeah, maybe you need to mix things up, but I will also say there are a lot of people out there that aren't comfortable with mixing things up.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, they're probably not going to be into polyamory, and maybe you guys should just break up.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, just break up.
Sometimes that is the thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe the next time you either enter into a polyamorous relationship or you find somebody that you can openly talk to and agree on sexual experiences and interests.
Yeah. So that was a very interesting article, and I wish I could have seen the study, but it just is what it is. So it is interesting to think about, like, just some of the common reasons people fall into polyamory. But let's get into the history.
I'm seeing some of these facts. And what am I walking into?
So I decided to start with early human history, as in 4.4 million years ago.
Of course you did. At least we're not starting in Greece this time.
Yeah. I have a bad habit of starting in Greece, and I'm trying to break out of that habit. So this information about early human history I got from the Scientific American. Human monogamy has deep roots. So it's really hard to extrapolate from data that is 4.4 million years old. So there's evidence to both suggest that monogamy was a common practice in that very early human civilization, and polyamory was a common practice. And I think the likelihood is both were common.
Yeah.
So some evidence suggests that monogamy benefited early humans because if a society is like let's say a woman has a child and a jealous mate is angry that the child is not his, or thinks the child is not his, or is trying to prove dominance, he might just kill the child. And if that keeps happening, if that violence keeps happening, obviously the civilization is going to die out. So having a monogamous coupling allowed for identifying who was the father of the child. And also the father bonded with the child, protected the child, and helped protect the mother and help provide for the mother.
Yeah.
So there's some evidence there, but there's also a polyamorous relationship structure might allow for more children to be born if it's one man, multiple women. And it might allow for more people caring for the child and the dynamic of the community to be more community focused, not a bunch of couples. Everybody is trying to keep all of these people alive. So it's like, we don't really know for sure.
Yeah.
It could go either way.
That's fair.
But I just thought that was interesting.
It's not quite as concrete as the crystal dildo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We do know they were having sex.
Yes. we do know.
So we're just gonna jump forward to modern history. And I'm talking about, like 1700 and stuff like that, not 4.4 million years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about polyamory in a historic context, it's important to acknowledge that some of these examples I'm bringing up would not be considered polyamory today because it's not consensual non-monogamy, or there's a big power imbalance sort of situation. Throughout history, we can see examples of polyamory. It's all over the place. It's in the Bible. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it's so interesting to me when Christians today argue against polyamory, when we have so many examples of polyamory in the Bible in a positive light. So it's like, what are you talking about right now? You don't know what you're talking about. I thought this was interesting. Genghis Khan had about 14 wives and 500 concubines.
500 is too much.
So, it could be that he had like 12 wives and he had like 400 concubines. But that's sort of like the record indicates in that range.
Yeah.
He had sex with so many people that he has an estimated 16 million descendants. It's really common to have Genghis Khan's DNA in you today.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, 16 million. I mean, there's like almost 8 billion people now, so it's not like super common, but that's a lot. That's a
too
lot.
much, but that's too much.
So that's an example of polyamory. It is a little like, how consenting were the wives? How consenting were the concubines? Is it just part of the societal structure, expected? Or, what was that situation like? Was there jealousy and resentment? In some cases, it seems like yes. Some cases, no. So it's just interesting to think about. We're going to talk about King Louis the 14th, which we talked about him on 420 Behavior.
Is that where we brought up the
yeah,
the
just
parties?
throwing big parties to
Yeah.
avoid war.
Fun.
Make love, not war. He's the original make love, not war guy. He didn't build it with his own posh hands. He hired people to
Can't have any calluses on these motherfuckers.
No.
We're busy fingering people.
So he had multiple mistresses, some of which were like named at court and given a position of power at court. Like if you were King Louis the 14th's mistress, you had political power in the Kingdom of France and political power in other kingdoms too. Like you held sway and stuff like that.
Okay.
I think he only had like 3 wives. A couple of them died. When his first wife died, he actually married his mistress, and then ended up getting a bunch more mistresses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not exactly kosher, the situation that was happening there.
Yeah.
But it's just another historic example. And some of these historic examples give a bad rep to polyamory. I will admit that. Jumping forward to the 1700s, this one I feel like is a healthy example and a really interesting example. It's talking about a queer woman in the 1700s.
Okay.
Duchess of Devonshire, Georgiana Cavendish. She was alive from 1757 to 1806. She was an activist for women's rights and an activist for demolishing the monarchy.
Love that for her.
Work. She was also an author, and she held a lot of political power. She organized events for the Whig Party. She just had a lot of alliances. She was just like a very powerful woman for her time. An interesting fact, she is Princess Diana's ancestor. I just thought that was interesting. So she's recorded as having many love affairs with both men and women. So something that is been ignored in recent retellings of history as an attempt to erase gay people in history is in the 18th century, there was something called romantic friendships. And these were basically romantic relationships between women. It was both accepted and considered fashionable. So a romantic friendship, like the thing that's maybe limiting about the romantic friendship is a woman was still expected to settle down and marry a man. But like in her school ages, when she's younger, even when she becomes married, like a romantic friendship was considered acceptable and fine.
Yeah. They're
And
not, if they're not coming,
throw a lady in.
yeah.
So, and these were romantic, and some of them it's evident that they were also sexual.
Yeah.
So, her relationship was clearly romantic and sexual. So, it suggested that her husband William was aware and accepting of these relationships. So, in her most notable relationship started in 1782, she met Lady Elizabeth Foster, who went by Bess. Eventually, Bess, Georgiana, and William formed a throuple that lasted 25 years.
Love that for them.
Yeah, until they all died.
That's cute.
The next guy, we've also talked about him before, Alfred Kinsey. He did the How Gay Are You scale.
Mm-hmm.
He is arguably one of the most influential sex researchers in the past century or so. His research really changed our perspective on human sexuality and started the trend towards not considering homosexuality as aberrant behavior and as just part of human behavior. He was openly bisexual and polyamorous. He had a wife named Clara Macmillan. I love this. He and Clara would often host orgies, and Clara would serve persimmon pies during break.
That's so cute. Are you kidding me?
Always have snacks at your orgies. There was several different relationships that he had, but at one point he, Clara, and one of his students, Clyde Martin, would form a triad. His student was like a postgraduate student, so I mean maybe there was some, impropriety there, but he was like older.
Yeah, it seems pretty wholesome.
Yeah.
Compared to the previous example.
Yeah. So this next one is copied and pasted because I ran out of time.
By this point, I was like, I'm finished.
And I'm like,
she's like, I'm almost done.
Just type it away. You had actually started on another script and finished that before I was done. So have you ever heard of Marlene Dietrich?
No.
At all? Okay. She's super famous in the silent film, film noir area, 1930 era, not area, from like 1930s to 1950s. She kind of popularized the femme fatale. She was married to a famous film producer, Rudolf Sieber, and she took many famous women and men as lovers, such as Frank Sinatra, John F. Kennedy, John, the President
of the United States.
Yeah, I don't believe he was president at the time.
Yeah.
But he might have been. He was sleeping with a lot of people while he was married and in office. Anyway, I just thought it was like John F. Kennedy. Mercedes de Acosta and Greta Garbo. She was open about these relationships with her husband, and they would often all spend time together. Sieber had his own lovers, and they were all friendly with each other. She also loved her husband very deeply. She took care of him when he had a heart attack and fell ill from pneumonia. And when rumors began to circulate about their divorce, she was very angry. And she spoke out. She said, "I consider Mr. Sieber the perfect husband and father." Sieber only gave one interview in his life, and when asked about his open marriage, he said, "She is a glamorous woman, and a glamorous woman is supposed to be surrounded by romance at all times."
I love that for them.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty healthy relationship. Honorable mention, Albert Einstein. So, Albert was more of a cheater than Polly. But he often writes about like wishing he didn't have the societal pressure to be monogamous, and that he felt that a polyamorous lifestyle was he said that everyone should be polyamorous, but that's not the case. He just like cheated on people and basically told the people he was cheating on, "I'm cheating on you." And
Yikes.
he did it at a time where it was hard to obtain a divorce. Women often relied on their husbands for financial support. So it wasn't like good what he was doing. I think it's interesting to think of a highly intellectual man as polyamorous, because I think there's this view of polyamory is for like people who are just willy-nilly romantic type people. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So that's it for history. I feel like I didn't do like a cohesive point A to Z, but I just wanted to, polyamory is about having relationships with multiple people. I just wanted to focus on people that I thought were very interesting historic examples of polyamory.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to look into Georgiana. Amazing.
Love that for her.
Is he fucking mowing the goddamn concrete out there? What is happening?
I think there's like grass on both sides. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's polyamory. Thoughts, feelings, opinions?
I'm happy for these people. If they're happy, I'm happy.
If you're happy, I'm happy. Unless you're making other people not happy.
Yeah.
Then I'm
in
not
which
happy.
case, kill yourself.
That's definitely not extreme. So if you want to stay in touch with us and keep up with what we're doing, we're on all of the cool social medias. If we're not on a social media, it's because it's lame and we don't want to be there. On TikTok, Instagram, and Instagram Threads, we are at Trauma and Triggers. And on Reddit, we are at Trauma and Triggers Pod. You better fucking tell your friends about us right now. And give us good reviews, because some asshole gave us a 1 star.
Yeah. We love to see them. We like to know that people are enjoying our podcast.
Yeah.
Or if you're really not enjoying it, please still let me know.
What's happening?
I just saw somebody climb into a car through a window.
It's none of our business.
No, it's not. Oh, they're finally done mowing.
Right at the end of the pod.
Also, we are heading into Pride Month.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited.
Both of us are very excited. We have a lot of topics we want to talk about that we've been saving for the gays. I believe next week we're going to be focusing on why gay women are okay, but not gay men.
To be clear, that's not our opinion.
Right. Yes. No. But societally, I feel like gay women are more accepted than gay men are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a request for us to talk about this topic specifically.
Yeah. I think I want to try to, during Pride Month, focus on, the queer topics that people maybe don't necessarily think about as much.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of discourse on this subject. So I want to focus on stuff that interests us and stuff that maybe people don't want to talk about as much. Yeah. And I'm excited.
Me too. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we have for you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.